Hey guys, it's Brad Lewis. Just completing our feedback for this week's readings. This week we were reading on compensation and alternate pay of teachers. It kind of builds on things that we had been reading about for a while. Merit pay ideas. Um, I believe, if not all of us, the vast majority of us teach in North Carolina, so we are very familiar with the pay scale of steps increased by years of experience and the things that go with it. According to our readings, that is one that is very, very common and what you see in most areas. We do not have collective bargaining, obviously, in North Carolina. We're not allowed to have unions, things like that, but they do also push for that. I guess the reason is your people in unions, a lot of times, your membership are going to be more veteran teachers. It's in their interest to have pay at that level. I'm torn on merit pay. I had always thought that getting rid of tenure would be a good thing. That if we got rid of tenure, then perhaps the pay would rise and those things would go. Unfortunately, what's happened in North Carolina is we've got rid of tenure and pay has not risen. So we just did half of it. On its own, when you say merit pay, that sounds great. That people are getting paid for performance. However, in our culture that we have, as far as trying to work towards collaboration and sharing, then I'm not sure how merit pay fits into that. It seems like it would be a problem. And in fact, I know in Reign of Error, on page 122, I believe, Ravitch talks about the corrosive effects of performance pay. And I agree with all of that. So it's a quandary because performance pay is going to promote competition, not collaboration. If I'm getting paid based on how I perform relative to others in the building, in the district, in the state, then it is not in my interest, if I am a effective teacher, to share that knowledge, to try to raise up those I'm competing against for pay. So I think that's the problem. Maybe you tweak it by doing merit pay school-wide. If a school makes it, maybe you do it by a district. If a district pays growth. But I think if you did those things, you would definitely have to have some way to monitor what that looks like, to make it a level playing field. You definitely could not do it by proficiency because that would not be a fair way. The school I currently work at, we're 27% EC. If you monitor those things by proficiency and what they're going to have, then we're never going to make it. We're never going to compete with schools if that's the goal. But if you do it by growth and some of the value-added systems that we had in our last readings, EVOS and things like that, then we have a chance to maybe do it. So maybe if you tweak merit pay into that sense, I really would think almost a whole district-wide thing is what you would have to do. That's the only way. But by school, I think Ravitch hits it perfect. It's not what we're trying to do. Not what we're trying to do at all. Peterson, in his book, talks about the same types of things. As far as that teaching, in his mind, is getting worse. He uses SAT scores to show what he thinks is an argument that schools and teachers are getting worse. And the way way we do principals. Getting rid of teachers is too difficult. He basically says that the quality of teaching has deteriorated over the last 50 years. Principals have deteriorated because they're coming from a deteriorated pool of teachers. He uses the example of California during a 5-year period only getting rid of 31 teachers when they had thousands, to show that we keep bad people, low performing people in. There was another quote we had in one of our readings. Let's see if I can find it real quick. From Low Pay, Low Quality by Timon, page 10. He said, we're paying low salaries for low quality teachers. Tough things to hear for those of us in education. Other groups said, if you look at salaries, it's not appropriate to rank teachers by salary because of the free time they have. And you see Timon also said a practical plan of action would be to couple increases to teacher salaries with tougher accountability. That was on page 13. I just haven't seen that. I think teachers and principals, we get ineffective teachers out. They leave the profession different ways. Yeah, you may not see them being fired, and that is difficult, and probably too difficult. I think North Carolina's, some of the stuff they've done are good as far as the probationary periods and making that decision easier after a year or 2 or 3 years to encourage somebody who's not being effective to move on. But that's what happens. They move on. Since I've been in administration, this is my 6th year in administration, never had to go to a dismissal for a teacher, to go to an action plan right on through to termination, and that is a 1 or 2 year process to do. But multiple times have started the process and the teacher moves on, either out of the teaching profession or to a different district, and someone else has the job of maybe coaching them. So I think, I don't think that they are correct in necessarily showing all those stats to think that bad teachers aren't addressed. Many just leave before it gets to that point. Now, do some stick too long? Yeah. And have I been around teachers that should get out but have tenure and don't, and you're really not going to be able to get them out? Been that also. But I think it's closer to the other, at least in our state. Now, those states that have the strong unions and the strong teacher tenure laws, I could see that going the other direction, and I could see that definitely being a problem. But I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. I also think when it comes to compensation, obviously North Carolina, we're behind. But I think overall, we are getting to the point, as if we talked about at a national level, that teachers are compensated. The benefits that teachers have are outstanding. But that is being threatened. You're seeing a lot of the threats for the pensions. We read last time about Scott Walker, Chris Christie, their things. North Carolina has moved to take away some of the retirement benefits and the things that go in that make the lower pay worth it. For me, certainly, knowing that I was not getting paid perhaps what I would have doing some other things was leveled out by knowing what my pension, my retirement will be like when I get done. I thought that was a pretty neat stat in the writing by, let's see, do more effective teachers earn more outside the classroom? Matthew Chingus and Martin West. They found basically that your more effective teachers have a grading earning potential. That when they leave, they can earn more than they did. But some teachers are earning more by teaching than they would otherwise. Their ineffectiveness is being hidden. I could agree with that. I think that also made sense. I've known people on both sides of that coin. Um, so when I read a lot of these things, I just think the answer's in the middle. I think their tenure needs to be loosened up. Um, if teachers are not being effective, if they're not continually growing and working on their craft, then it needs to be easier to get them away. I think the compensation and the benefits for teachers needs to increase. Maybe not to the level. I think there's a merit in the stat that they showed us, where if you did it by hourly and stretched it out over a 12-month pay, that they'd be making equivalent of engineers and things like that. So I mean, I think that makes sense. You get summers off for teachers, and um, you get holidays, and you get a lot of days off that other professions do not. So I think it's valid in there in the sense. But I do think, unfortunately, our profession, our not our profession, our society is so materialistic that we value things by the pay they get, and that's a bad thing. I do think teachers should have a higher value in society, and educators should have a higher value in society. And since the pay is not seen in line with some of those other things, that affects how they're viewed. That's the most unfortunate thing, and that would be a whole other thing to solve. But I think lessening tenure and the bureaucracy around getting rid of ineffective teachers, realizing that teaching, what we have to do is coach and grow and work with people, um, increasing the professionalism in which teachers are viewed, uh, would go a long way um, in some of those things. So, having said all that, we do the greatest profession. There's nothing I would rather do short of playing in the NBA, and that didn't work out. So, uh, you know, with it all and with all the problems we have, still love it. Love it very much. So, appreciate you guys listening. Hope everybody's doing well. About another 5 weeks, and we'll get a little break. Have a good one.